Let's go to Alan Watt. Alan, so much is happening in the world. I've got all my questions, but I want to get into what you think is most important right now. But we're seeing just an acceleration of the program. The street lamps, we already knew had microphones, many of them. Now they're admitting it. The chemtrails, they're now admitting it, saying it's for your own good. The plan to give us forced inoculations and release mosquitoes that put nanotech viruses into us to re-engineer our brains, give us basically servile lobotomies, where we can't get angry or whatever. That's all being announced. Eugenics is being announced. Just pell-mell evil, Al-Qaeda flags, going up in Libya. Peace Prize, children's faces blown off, just giggling, snickering depression, wholesale insanity. Are they just trying to overwhelm us right now to make us go into a catatonic psychological state of learned helplessness, Alan Watt?
I think it could be partly that because of the ones who are following this whole program. But you got to remember that most of the populations are not following the program. They've never really been awake. They follow mainstream and lots of entertainment. I think they're pushing now because it's time to push for this whole amalgamation into they call it the Great Transformation. That's the official title of it, at this stage of it. And a transformation of the whole planet into the system that Quigley touched on. He talked about the economic side of it, mainly the economic side, as they amalgamate the continents and the central banks into one system under the Bank of International Settlements. He talked about this in the 60s. So we're on course with all of this. And I think the public are so dumbed down today, to be honest with you. It's time now to push for the next part. All the public really know from watching mainstream is that all economies are in bad shape, pretty well, except for China. And that we've got to do something about it. So they're preparing the public's minds for a new type of economic system, which is to be introduced in different countries, probably a starter in Europe and then eventually into America. It's a new economic system based on resources and taxation by consumption. A value-added tax will replace, basically, eventually it will replace all other taxes. And so you'll be kept at a certain minimum standard of living in a communitarian living area, your region or your local area for communitarianism. But it started off in Britain. It's going pell-mell there. And it's to be introduced into the States. In fact, they've just started. The same organization that started it in Britain has just launched their big movements in the U.S. as well. So it's a whole new way of living. They call it a scientific economy, a scientifically designed, run right down to your local level and what you do or what you're assigned to do with your new kind of job. And where they can make people helpless enough with a bad economy, the general public will grab at any straw to save themselves.
Well, they also admit, as you know, that it's designed to shut things off, that you will live at a lower standard. The government publicly, to kind of the unwashed masses as they see them, say we're trying to make your life better. But in all the public manuals and even public statements, it's like we're going to shut everything off from these people and start euthanizing. And don't you like that, slaves? And the slaves go, yeah, we're trendy. Kill us. Mm-hmm. We're trendy. Oh, yeah, we like it.
You understand, too, Alex, that all the old values that kept society strong, like that kept communities, really real communities, natural communities strong, and that also give you your values between each other, have been destroyed, demolished since the 1960s, basically.
Yeah, they don't want us. We're going to break, Alan. I want you to continue along that line. They admit in all these handbooks, we've shown them on air, they teach it to the regular social workers at UT in the handbook. The family's a disease. It's got to be removed. But they really don't think it's a disease. It's a disease to the globalists. They don't want you having any sense of identity and any real roots. You've got to be like a blank slate they just download trendiness into. And then you just go, oh my God, I take a shot, I get brain damage. It's so much fun. Wow, I'm dying of cancer. People are dying all around me. It's trendy. Fluoride in the water. It's trendy. Government gang raping me. It's trendy. All right, let me bring this up for Alan Watt. It's up at drudgereport.com right now. We'll get it linked up at Infowars.com as well. But this is out of NBC Los Angeles. Russian genius lived with 26 corpses. Some skeletal remains were reportedly dressed up as a doll and a teddy bear. Wow, I'm a better newsreader when I'm totally tired. So I get so excited normally I can't even read stuff. When I'm not burnt out. A Russian man who speaks 13 languages and lectured at Museum Head the corpses of 26 women in a small apartment. Anatoly Moskvin, 45, had dug up many of the mummified bodies from graves, and some were dressed up and arranged around his 3-room apartment in western Russia. According to BNO News, the bodies were discovered after his parents came for an unexpected visit. I'm sorry, it's just so sick. I'm laughing because it's sick. Russian, imagine his parents walking in. Oh, but he's such a nice man. See, this is what government is like. It's far worse than this. And as the IQ goes up, this gets even more common. Russian media reported the bodies were females, ages between 15 and 26, who died years ago. But it goes on. Life News said that he's a historian who sneaked into graveyards at night, dug up bodies, and took them home in plastic bags. Back in his apartment, he dressed up the bodies as dolls, wearing dresses and stockings. That's actually a phenomenon. I've seen cases of that in the U.S. People that are in love with corpses. Now, skeletons, actually. But, it's funny. Alan, this comes out, they're calling this guy sick, and I agree it's completely insane. But the royal family, it just came out, has been, recently, not just Vlad the Impaler days, eating human body parts. They say they believe it's nutritious, which adds to all the lore. This is a short segment, long one's coming up, but from your research of the British royal bloodline, which is German, it's really Transylvanian, and all of this, why are so many of these elitists into this stuff?
It's an ancient myth or belief in regeneration, basically, especially if you get, we know in ancient times and probably into the Middle Ages, they would actually collect the menstrual fluids of women and drink that, believing it's restored youth to them. The same thing is still going on in some circles today to do with the blood that comes from the umbilical cord of babies. And some circles that definitely still do that. But that was traditionally a royal thing to do. And it goes back all the way back to Egypt, actually.
Yeah, here's what the commenters are saying. They were actually Chicago registered voters. The next one said, everyone thinks this is funny and strange, but here in Chicago, these dead people would all be called voters. Another one says he wanted his mummy. The other says what some guys will do to get a date. How much lead time does one need to put away 26 corpses before mom and dad come to visit? Again, but this is seen as sick, but when the royals are into this stuff, it's seen as loving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we know too that you understand that Kabbalah was very, very high in the Middle Ages, and especially in France and England too. But in France, they have found some of the paraphernalia they used in the royal courts during that time for the king, and they found skinned babies. The skin of the babies were there. That was again a rejuvenation thing. If you wore the skin of a youth, it went through this ritual, supposedly restored youth to them, so they believed. And of course the chalice for the blood and all the rest of it. So they've always been into this kind of thing. They've been fascinated with, when you're up there in power, you have nothing to go for but more power and immortality, and this is part of the Kabbalistic rituals they went into right through into King Louis XVI.
Why is Prince Charles now making such a big deal about he's a Transylvanian and he's got a house there, Vlad the Impaler's old house, and he loves it?
We found something, but I wouldn't go too far with it. But Charlie is a numbskull too, and he's really pretty stupid. Even at school, I talked to one of his headmasters once, and he said the same thing to me. And but Charlie had no purpose for a long, long time. He said that he is descended from David. He said he was an Olympian from the old gods of the Olympics, and there's a secret society too. And he was defender of faith, the faith, which is Christian faith, and he changed it to defender of all faiths. And now he's trying to say that he's Transylvanian. What they're trying to make out is that their ancestors were Saxon people or Prussian people that once dominated Transylvania as well as one of their biggest states. In reality, Saxe, Coburg, Gotha are the three main houses they come from. They were Prussian, German states, basically.
Yeah.
They were all from the same family, interbred. And eventually, in the 1800s, in the early 1800s, in fact, 18th century, I should say, they brought in merchants, very rich merchants, and they married into them. They became the dominant strain.
Stay there. We'll be right back. Stay right there. I'll talk more about that with Alan Watt and a lot more. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Alan Watt, CuttingTheMatrix.com. He is our guest. And we are bringing you the 4th annual Money Bomb to expand this independent media operation. Nightly news reports that then are put out to the four winds of the web after they first air at PrisonPlanet.tv. We are having just a giant effect thanks to your support, and the donations are really starting to pour in right now. We've gotten up to about $300,000. We haven't quite updated that yet, and it'll really help us expand. So I want to thank all of you. InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. I mean, where can you say that by spreading the word about a show or supporting us or donating, that who can you say out there is having a bigger effect out of all the great people that are out there than this transmission? This is also a platform for all those great people that we have on, like Alan Watts. So donate today at InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. I'm getting a little bit of weirdness on my mic here. I don't know what's going on with this, but I'm getting a little bit of that flutter thing it does every once in a while. Or like distortion in my ear. I'm not quite sure, but I might check the board in there and see if something's been changed, or perhaps it's in here. There it stopped. I don't know if people could hear that on air. But we're opening the phones up, too. It's 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. If you have any questions or comments for Alan Watt. Alan, the reason I keep going back to this is knowing the enemy, knowing the global elite, knowing what they're into. Obviously, I don't believe there's real vampires running around. People have archetypes for all of this where they could say it's vampires, it's reptoids, because, you know, we're saying these aren't humans. They don't act like humans. Well, psychopaths don't act like humans. But really, they're just, I guess, genetically different. They don't have empathy. In fact, a lot of them enjoy hurting innocent people. But is that, from your research, that's why every culture has these legends of vampires and stuff. And because, well, in a lot of cultures, it wasn't even, I mean, they were doing human sacrifice. They were blood drinking. And you study the elites, they're obsessed with this. And that's why they do the things that they're doing. Alan Watt.
Well, yeah, it's a very primitive thing. It goes way back into ancient times. Even when some of the tribes did, and some still do in Africa, drink the blood of the cattle as they move, which is a more practical thing. You understand that. But of course, when it comes into the psychopathic type, they want to stun those they want to subdue. They want to stun them by doing something which terrifies them. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did this in ancient times publicly at times as well, drinking the blood of humans or a sacrifice or something like that. So, but then again, as I say, in the Middle Ages, you had the magic part coming into it from the Eastern Europe and blending with it, and that became very popular in the circles of royalty. And up to the present time, too, there's a lot of strange things to do. I mean, a psychopath has no inhibition. You can understand that. It doesn't matter what culture that they instill upon the people, but they always put a culture on the people and have their managers to manage that culture. Today it's all sociologists that do it for us, and psychologists and neurologists and neuroscientists, they call them. So they give us the present culture. They work with industry. They work with the media. They work with all entertainers today, and they have for a long, long time. So, but the psychopath himself doesn't follow that culture except in public for PR shots. It'll seem fairly normal, read scripts. But in private life, they have no inhibitions whatsoever. The laws that apply to the general population never apply to them. They're above the laws, and they can get away with. They actually break a lot of laws and get in touch, because you'll always find, if you go into the law books, royalty cannot be charged or fined for anything. They're above all law. They can only be tried by a peer group, which is other members of royalty. And that's why you're tried by a jury of your peers. Commoners are not the peers of royalty, you see. So they have a completely different way of doing things. But there's nothing new in this whatsoever. There's a famous club in London that's still on the go, I think. And Lord Mountbatten used to take little boys, underage boys, into this club. It was a lot of money sitting with a little boy and getting him pissed drunk and going up to one of the rooms with him. No one ever reported on that, except one later on years ago. Actually, he did it by word of mouth, but he couldn't report it in Fleet Street, or they'd have been fined and charged. The newspapers would be closed down, actually, if you actually published something like that. So they're above all the things. Now, a psychopath, too, really enjoys all sensations. They flourish on sensations. Whatever drug turns them on, gives them a bitter high. Whatever, the more weirdest, kinkiest sex they can possibly get, gives them a better high. That's what they live for, is the highs in life, and they jet all over the place to have their little orgies and things like that. But, of course, that's just the nature of the psychopath. Lower level psychopaths have to put a better show on to the public, pretend they're one of you, but at the top, royalty, apart from the PR shots, they live a completely different lifestyle that you can ever imagine. Yeah.
And really, that's what modern civilization has become, is a psychopath playground, and they've created the artificial culture, the culture creators, and more are trying to convert a large servant class over to not just do this ritually here and there, but they want to go into mass-scale war, mass-scale death. You or I would look at the video of the 3-year-old girl with her lower mandible blown off, tongue hanging out in absolute panic, and that rips our heart out, rips our guts out. But the globalists, for them, that's beautiful. That's a sensation. That is just grand. And that's why they make the joke, this is peace, ha, ha, ha. It's all about...
Well, they've done many studies with a psychopath, and have wired them up to various electrical equipment to study the brain, including the electromagnetic imaging. And they can actually see what parts of the brain are stimulated or not even touched. When they look at different photographs, psychopaths don't have a horror. They don't have recoil with horror. It's gruesome pictures. There's a neutral image in the brain. Sexual things, so on, like that. Even torture might turn them on. But things which shock most people has no actual response.
Well, I believe it's healthy and normal to recoil from all that. But then there's a place in good people where I wouldn't enjoy it, but I do have a compulsion in my mind that these people need to be routed out. I'm somebody who wouldn't hurt a flea, but when I see the globalist, I have an overwhelming drive to see him hang high. And of course that's a natural instinct. They're trying to get that out of the general public, so we'll just sit here and take it. As a father, as a human, as a warrior, as a guardian, nothing special, just a man, I have absolute, total energy, even though I'm exhausted right now just thinking about these people, to want to defeat them. And I would imagine you have that same view as well.
Oh, yeah. You understand, we have our figureheads that still have power, like Prince Charles. There's articles recently where he can actually veto or just nullify any law that's going to affect him and his personal...
In fact, let me stop you. Guys, pull up London Guardian, headline, Prince Charles offered vetoes, I think it's 50 times. But they admit, he has a loophole where he runs everything. He's the ruler, and he runs anything he wants is his. And I tell Canadians this, I go, the Queen suspended your parliament 3 times. They go, no, you're a liar. So I show articles, and then they go, well, that's just ceremonial. But again, this is how it works. Go ahead.
Well, there's no law can be passed in any of the British Commonwealth countries, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Britain, even India still follows a lot of those rules because they're part of the British Commonwealth. And so no law can be passed in those countries without the final permission of the Queen. She must stamp it, basically, to pass it or nullify it. So that they're still very powerful, but they also have, again, their pals, their cousins too, because they're interrelated with the big bankers. They're intermarried with them. I'm talking about bankers who lend to nations, and so they're intermarried with those guys too. They're also inbred psychopaths that have been at this for hundreds and hundreds of years. So we have, see, everything runs from the top down by money. And once you have money, you can buy everything. You buy countries, because every country is in debt, so you make sure of that by the system that you introduce. And then the guy who's in charge of money can basically say, well, I'll give you this if you're going to put so much to the military, and here's a little deal, I'd like your military to attack that country over there because they haven't been paying their debts and all this kind of stuff. And this is how it really works. That's why Rothschild said, give me control of your money system, and I care not who rules the country, because he knew from previous experience that whoever rules the money rules the whole country anyway, and the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister must go to the banker for cap in hand every year for his cash, So money rules it, and as I say, they're interbred psychopaths too. And you find the Rothschilds are intermarried with the royal families of Britain and Europe as well. So we're run by psychopaths on all levels. Some of the other ones too, by the way, it's interesting, go into the military. They just shoot up through the ranks naturally, probably how they attended, in fact, but they end up being in charge at the top levels of military. So there you have your royal powers for ultimate laws. You have your financial industry bodies there that govern the whole finance of the whole country. They use the people like peasants for taxation to fund their wars and their loans and all the rest of it. And then you have guys at the top of the military who are who decide to take you off to war. So they have the little plans that really are secret plans from the public. The public's never to know the real reasons for anything, and they never do. They're never told the real reasons for any war, or the real reasons for anything happening within their country. So psychopaths really, and I've said this, all people who are going to be in charge or given power over any citizen should be tested for psychopathy. You got to start with that, number one, that rule right off the bat. And that goes for your money system and every other system there is, because psychopaths, once they get in, they can cause so much damage so quickly. And by the way, they recognize each other. They find each other very quickly. They instantly recognize another psychopath, and they form their little societies that end up ruling big chunks of the world, like the Council on Foreign Relations.
They are a cancer, and they must be routed out. They are the vampires, not physical vampires, but spiritually, and they have to be routed, or they will continue to feed on us. Look at this headline out of CBS News. Denver collects fines on drivers who stop at red lights, and if their bumper just goes 1 inch over the white line, again, but then the system can commit any crimes they want. Alan Watt is our guest right now. Jesse Ventura called me last night about the whole TSA thing and said he would try to call us after the press conference. But we'll see what happens with that. That's scheduled to happen around noon. We're going to have Alan Watt with us till 5 after. Then Jim Mars is going to be popping in, look at the banking and the whole world, the wars that are coming up and the rest of it. I want to go to Lauren, Patrick, John Lee, and Chantel and others that are wanting to talk to Alan Watt. Just briefly, Alan, what's your view on this whole Iran situation?
Well, I was pretty certain that of how geopolitics was going to run this one, and it has turned out this way. I knew that Israel would do it. You see, Israel put out, if you read the old newspapers from Israel, you'll find that when the New American Century put out their list of countries they wanted to just take down, they had Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, they had Libya, they had Iran, Egypt, etc., all on the list. And of course, Obama is just following the same list. He was even congratulated by Rumsfeld for doing so. And but Israel kept telling the U.S. and the Israeli papers, don't stop at this country, keep going. They were really ticked off that the U.S. wasn't going through them all one after another. They had these long pauses in between. So this time I thought, well, Israel will have to, for the appearance's sake, that's for appearance's sake, Israel will come up and stand up and say, we're going to attack. And then the media will come out and say that's putting pressure on the U.S., who doesn't want a full-scale attack on Iran. And therefore, they'll step up the sanctions, they'll step up, they'll take over. And that's exactly how they're playing it out. They get Israel to come out first with a threatened strike on Iran, and the U.S. will step in saying, we're the protector, we'll that, and then the U.S. takes the blame, pays the cost of it financially and in blood as well. And that's the whole region then cleared. There's only one dominant country to be allowed in that whole region. That was decided and talked about before they even set up the State of Israel. So you're simply watching a very old plan work out on time, on cue, the way that they planned it.
Yep. Let's go ahead and talk to John in Wisconsin. John, you're on the air. Welcome.
Hi, it's a real pleasure to speak to you guys. Obviously, InfoWars, Prison Planet, and Cutting Through the Matrix, they're daily visits for me and most of the audience out there. So, I mean, that's about as high a praise I can offer.
Thank you.
I kind of want to change the subject just a little bit. I saw this movie recently about Lyme disease and just how it's spreading all over the place, and the fact that there's a real ignorance as far as, you know, how to treat the disease. And it seems like the medical establishment, through their publishing and through all their indoctrination, has all these doctors under wraps, you know, and I kind of wonder if they have it as like this giant, you know, roving horde of, you know, infected deer and infected ticks that they're controlling through the DNR. And I mean, how integrated is all this?
Well, we know Lyme disease is pretty much on record. Deer swam from Plum Island over to New York. It's less than a mile. Deer do that. And it was a zoological weapons base. They brought Nazis over there after World War II. It's on record. And so Lyme disease is a souped-up, weaponized system. And, yeah, it's all part of their degenerative disease weapon program. And then they just shelve and then don't cover under insurance all the real treatments for things. Alan?
It's actually older. It was invented in Canada during World War II. And there's a good book out there. It's called Deadly Allies, Canada's Secret War. Canada has led the field in bacterial and viral warfare during and since World War II.
Yeah, I knew about that, but the word I got, but the main spread point they said was they particularly weaponized it even more at Plum Island.
Yeah, they sent it down to Plum Island in the States to be worked on, and the vector that they chose was, of course, at the time it was ticks. They dropped it from planes at one point across the western part of Canada onto deer herds to see how it would spread, and then spread amongst the populations. And then eventually, of course, they've actually weaponized it now. It's been in the papers in Canada that mosquitoes can carry it now as well.
So they're just going to dole out all this in a loving way to kill you and your family, your children. You know, they love degenerative diseases. So it's another little loving goody-good. Do you want to add anything else, John?
Do I add a little bit?
Stay there. We're going to come back. The government loves you. We find ourselves at PrisonPlanet.tv subscriptions, sponsors, book sales, videos. But, you know, we're selling books for $5 a piece. And that's what it basically cost us to have them. Well, not basically. It actually cost more than that. Which, like, say, Mark Dice's book. Or when we're giving out, selling the bumper stickers at cost, you know, it just doesn't fund things. And so pure capital expenditures allowing us to continue and grow. It's thanks to you, and thanks to folks donating at InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. That's InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. We've also got a lot of one-of-a-kind memorabilia and stuff up at the eBay account. That's on the bottom of InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. You can donate there on the side, or you can buy books, videos, get a free trial subscription at PrisonPlanet.tv, and then keep the subscription in 15 days. Again, we just couldn't do any of this without you and all of our great AIM and FM affiliates as well. Be sure and support them and local sponsors. Okay, finishing up, John, on the loving Lyme's disease, which you can go research, is a bioweapon, and it's just all part of the nastiness of the globalist.
Do either of you guys know if there's like a correlation between chronic wasting disease and Lyme disease? Is that sort of the same condition, or?
Yeah, there's all sorts of little carrier weapons they can put into ticks and other systems. And now Bill Gates has said they're releasing the mosquitoes that are genetically engineered. They'll put whatever they want in them, and they're going to give it to you. And that's the way it is, because he's smiling and dances around, and we're all trained. If it's an authority figure, they can kill us. And that's just how it works. You know, They
want to control the hinterland so that, you know, any rebels that are gathering will just die of some kind of disease because they've been infected.
It's even more than that. You're on the right track, though. There's been a big scare here a few years ago, and where I am, at the whole northern area, and they tried to say that not just Lyme's disease, but also also the various other diseases spread by mosquitoes was on the way. And they had everybody terrified. People were wearing full jackets of the mesh, the mosquito mesh. Even gardeners were wearing them. They were terrified.
Hey, it's even in mainstream news, Alan, interrupt you, because you were that West Nile came out of a government weapon program. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and that kind of fizzled away, that one, and terrified people too. But you start to get the impression it's just not safe to live in the country anymore. And of course, what they'll do, and what they have been doing, is say, well, we can actually spray and keep down the mosquitoes around cities, but we can't, of course, spray outside of the cities, etc., etc. You're quite right. They can find whoever they want. And in fact, right after 9/11, the BBC had the top guy on from MI5 who was saying that if they keep putting up sites and putting up their own agents there to entice youngsters into these sites to carry out bombs for sting operations, they'll end up creating an actual organization, Al-Qaeda, which did not exist before.
Yeah, just like they can get kids to join the military and have their heads shaved and be brainwashed, the government posing with recruiters can recruit people to radical Islam.
Absolutely, too. And most of them are actually sting operations, and they supply the fake bombs. They get a bunch of youngsters there who've watched too many video games, and they're in on the plot, and they get caught red-handed with the goods, and they're arrested. So, see, if you're going to change the world into a war scenario, and this is the whole thing since 9/11, I said at the time, I said, you're going to see rationing down the road, all the things that you see in warfare, even eventually refugees getting moved from one area to another. That will happen because they must get all the things that worked.
And that was in the UN report from Mexico last month, is that they are going to force move people for the earth.
Mm-hmm. And that is all part of it, a true war scenario, because they know the psychological impacts of all these things, how it has on the general populations. They buckle under even more. They do what they're told during these scenarios. They're terrified, and they ram whole bunches of new laws down their throats. And there's no objection from the people who are terrified. That's what they must do now. And of course, that's what the whole ecological movement is to: sustainability, so on, weather, global warming, all this nonsense. It's an excuse to bring all of this on into the controlled, scientifically controlled society. And remember, Russell said that this will come. He says that they were working towards it back in the 30s, 40s, and the 50s, and he says that this will come. And he said when it comes in, it will be a dictatorial and absolutely tyrannical system, but that's what I prefer, he said. It would have to be utterly tyrannical as a scientific dictatorship. So that's what we're going to see getting produced. I mean, it's all through the schools. For the last 15 to 20 years, the children have been taught to be greenies, taught that government is good, taught that they must share their food with the whole world, and in reality, it's nothing to do with that. The United Nations Department of Agriculture was set up with the task when it was created to be the organization that will distribute food to every region across the world.
As Henry Kissinger said, stay there. And they're showing cartoons to young kids that say this. The UN decides what you get for dinner. I mean, it's really happening.
We are on the march. The empire is on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
Alan Watt is our guest. He seems to come on whenever big events are happening. I guess good luck or bad luck. But he is here with us. We've got a top meteorologist who's been accurately predicting the weather for a long time and finally getting the attention he deserves. We're dealing with this ice age situation coming up into the 4th hour today. I know we're on several radio stations in the great state of Maryland. Great people up there. We hope that no one has been injured, but they're reporting packages exploding, and they're not sure if there's injuries. This is a developing situation. Bomb squad at State Building near State House after mailroom employees injured. That's the Baltimore Sun saying there are injuries, and other WBAL-TV says they're not sure. My crew will continue to give us this as it comes in. Fire crews, hazmat sent to the Maryland Department of Transportation, where they were investigating reported explosions at the Maryland Department of Transportation headquarters. And with all the drills and things they do, it just creates this hype and fear. I mean, I saw big accidents the other night, looked like they were fatalities. Do we all freak out and get scared of that? We still drive our cars, 300,000+ dead a year just in the U.S., millions dead every year overall. but then a few deaths here and there from, quote, terrorists, and our whole way of life ends, and now they stick their hands down our pants with the TSA, breaking our will. We did search terms today, and I haven't done this in about 3 weeks until yesterday, and it did become the #1 search term, censorship, Jesse Ventura. We're doing prison cities today, but I said I might fire another key search term torpedo, because for those that don't know, it causes hundreds of blogs, newspapers to pick up on it and look at it. With the history of stage terror and all the other mainstream news articles even saying stage terror in Maryland, D.C., Oregon, Washington State, Colorado in previous months, we need to launch a big torpedo here with the headline, Maryland Staged Terror. That's even more important than searching prison cities. Maryland Staged Terror. Let's make it #1. So all the people searching will see the blurb article Watson and Steve Watson. Both Watsons are doing. Aaron Dykes is here. I want him on it at Infowars.com. We're going right back to our guest here in a moment to get his take on this. Salon Magazine, lawyer, FBI entrapped Baltimore bomb plot suspect. This was December 13th, just a month ago. Less than a month. No way Antonio Martinez could have assembled the phony bomb intended to blow up the recruitment center, defense says. Same thing came out. The government isn't infiltrating groups. They advertise. They promote. And it's always American idiots who convert and then get radicalized. Just like Texas Monthly in '98 gave a bum steer award to the FBI for creating a Klan group, trying to get them to blow up a chemical plant for 2 years. The FBI cooked the bomb, trained the driver, told him to go ahead with the attack. An insider blew the whistle. The 1993 World Trade Center first attack. Anwar al-Awlaki, top of al-Qaeda below bin Laden, secretly under Pentagon control, Fox News, running the underwear bombing, the shoe bomber, the Fort Hood shooter, the Times Square. They go out and find, out of 100 million Muslims, fruitcake crackpots. I mean, this is, folks, I can't tell you how many times I've had cops in plain clothes come to events I'm at and say, let's blow stuff up, Alex. And I just start calling the police on them. And they go, I'm an officer, and run off. I mean, look, that's what they do, okay? I want to go back to Alan Watt on this, but the search term, Maryland Staged Terror. And all the rest of you out there, write your own articles on it. We've got the history of this. Man arrested, Maryland terror bomb plot. So, this Martinez person. I tell you, Alan Watt, this is so obvious what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got to, if you're setting up a world of totalitarianism and tyranny, you've got to justify the reasons for it. So if nothing's happening, you make it happen. And this is a very old technique, of course. They've even put it in comedy shows like Brazil, where bombs go off every so often in restaurants. They never catch a terrorist, but everyone believes the propaganda. It's the terrorists that are doing it. So we need all of these checkpoints and pat-downs and so on. This is a simple technique, and it works very well. Most of the public, listen to nothing but mainstream news. And that's what they believe. They believe it's all for their own good and so on. And they've already lost their ability to stand up for anything, most of them, because the first attack was on men itself and the family unit. And men traditionally, and the British government did studies on this as they went into different countries to conquer them. It was always the men who stood up for their culture, their way of life, their family, their wife, and so on. You take all of that away from them, you destroy the culture, you take away the wife, and there's nothing to stand up for. In fact, he becomes rather like a lazy dog who just sits and watches all the porno movies that are coming out, goes to parties and picks up the odd female who's awfully available and these days. And that's what you have.
And it's all empty. It's all empty. There isn't that tribal fulfillment of taking care of your family and the men and women being on a team. It's a bunch of unhappy people mad that life is hell, so they break up because they haven't submitted to each other.
That's correct. It takes commitment, you see, for everything that you do. Even to fight this, it takes commitment. And you must only start with yourself. And we've all been contaminated with this system, and that's what it's called. Your indoctrination and your lifestyle is called contamination. And the Soviets called it that, too, since they helped introduce a lot of it. And
we've got their manuals where they describe everything that's been done here.
Yes, and you have to decontaminate yourself, starting with yourself. And it doesn't matter what the rest go and do, and they want you to go along with them. You say, no, I'm not doing that. And if they ask you why, you tell them. that things are going to get awfully bad unless we discipline ourselves. We're doomed.
And what do the FBI training manuals say? The white male who's nice and friendly, who's professional, who exercises a lot, who wants to be involved in the community. That's a Texas Homeland Security manual. That's the enemy. That clean-cut, pure person is an enemy.
You see, what's been left for the rest of the public with their dysfunctional relationships and casual relationships is that they have no purpose. And to fill up their gap for no purpose, they've got so much cheap entertainment just thrown at them, and enough cash in their pockets to go party at weekends. And that's what they think living is all about now. They have no bonding to any community or any family. And
exactly, whether you're African or Japanese or an American, if you're a pure woman or a pure man or trying to be pure, they know you're going to see all of this, and so that's why you're the enemy. Yeah,
and so therefore, as I say, you've got to start with yourself and change yourself and decontaminate yourself, even the things that you might be addicted to. I've had young people write to me who know what's going on, and they'll tell me that they still like certain parts of it. They like the partying, they like the multi-casual affairs that they have, sexual affairs, and they don't realize that that's all part of the destructiveness. You can't have it both ways, because when you look at all from the primitive tribes to our own tribes that lived up into the 1800s, they all lived in the same structure, same family structure, and you can't go around just willy-nilly with promiscuity and all the rest of it. That destroys everything, and that's why it was the main weapon to be promoted during the 60s, 70s, and 80s to the present time. You can't have it both ways. You've got to change yourself in order to change the world.
And they train the so-called middle class to be in love with their servitude. As Bertrand Russell said they would, when you try to warn them, they have a defense mechanism to get a little creamy-eyed look, in their eyes and giggle at you. And then they'll even accept it and say, yeah, I like it. They think by doing that Crime Stop mind trick, it gives them power over it. And the average male out there is an Arrested Development 6-year-old.
Yeah, definitely. And even politicians in the U.S., I read an article pretty recently, too, where one of your congressmen said that we must train the public by using the language of the media, which is meant for the 5th grade. That's what they're using on the public and have been for an awful long time. But you're quite right, too. A lot of it's aimed at the male. As I say today, it's a shopping mall for sex. That's what all it is. It's like candy.
And notice they don't let males act like warrior males in any context, and they put chemicals in the water to reduce testosterone. But then in one area, if you want to be a cop or a soldier, then you're allowed to act that out, but against your own people.
That's absolutely true. In other words, winners and losers. And youngsters who grow up with video games, too, in dysfunctional families or no family at all, look, that's all that they see things in black and white, winners and losers, and they want to be on the winning team. Some have told me that, by the way, and they want to get into the black outfits and have the big machine gun and order people about because they know they're going to get more privileges than those who are under the gun. Yeah.
And they've gone from denying that police are being put on steroids to major city police chiefs, even here in Texas, basically ordering everyone to inject testosterone.
Yeah, that's correct. And they've been doing this really for years, anyway, long beforehand. And they put on the beef, of course, and you can tell, too, it's more than just an effect on your muscle, etc. They become sluggish in their brain. They become more primitive. There's no doubt about that either. They become monsters. In fact, they love to beat people up and go to excess. And mind you, too, for years they've been recruiting the lower IQ types for the police force. And I've
been listening to Howard Stern lately, just randomly in my car on XM, and every time I tune in, he's glorifying police beating innocent people and how good it is. And then I hear it on other shows that are for the lowest common denominator. They're teaching us that all of this evil is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And once again, the public have been so desensitized to horror. What should offend them as being horrific. It's not. It actually get off on it, just like a movie. They can't tell the difference between fiction and, in fact, it's better alive. That's what some of them say.
Yeah, they're blurring the two, and it's also real popular on the internet for girls to abuse cats and dogs and ferrets, and they get off on it. But then the minute they're being abused, they can't believe it and cry for mommy.
Yes. Or say that the government should be a law about that. And that's exactly what government wants. They love to put more laws on you. But
yeah, they promote that we don't govern ourselves, so they will govern us.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's true. If you don't govern yourself, then someone else is going to do it for you. And it's the same with your mind. If you don't take care, because you're the gatekeeper of what comes into your mind and affects you, then somebody else will, and they've been doing that for an awful long time.